I do want to thank you for coming today. Superintendent Townsend, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you for allowing Say Something to be able to speak to your students over the last several years. I'll say this, each year that we come in and do the assemblies, we get to speak to over 9,000 students in this school district. So I thank you as parents and leaders for being here, but there's probably another 8,900 that should be here too. Parents that have kids that aren't here. So I thank you for having that interest of being here and being this today. I want to tell you a story about a girl named Emily. Emily was a ninth grader. She was a girl that loved life. She was fun, she was outgoing. She was one of the types of girls that when she walked into the room, and she brought a laugh to everybody's face. If she didn't know you and you looked depressed, she'd come and sit by you and just try to get you going. That was her life. And all ninth grade, man, she was excited because she was finally in high school. She was excited that she got to be at the big place. That was the way it was where she was in her school. And she goes through the whole ninth grade year. She's made friends. She's got all these people that she's fallen in love with and building this circle base. She joins band, and then her first year of band becomes first chair with saxophone. She's a girl that, man, she wants her makeup just right, and so her makeup every day when she'd go to school would be right on point. Goes through the summer, things are going well after that ninth grade year, and she goes into her 10th grade year of high school. Her 10th grade year of high school starts off much like any others. Mom's taking her shopping. She's going to get the clothes that she's wanting. She's already talking to her friends and texting them and planning where they're going to be and all this stuff they're going to do. She's so excited about that year. She gets to school. Sure enough, first day of school, she's connecting with her friends. It was like they picked up right where they left off from the previous year. They begin to talk, begin to do things, but unbeknownst to Emily, there was 3 girls that picked her out of the crowd. That's the girl that was laughing, always fun. She was the one that was always cutting up. She's our target this year. She's going to be our game. That was how she was explained. At some point, these girls friended Emily, and as Officer Dimitri was saying, there's so much safety stuff. Emily made a mistake. She connected her cell phone, had her cell phone number linked to her account, so it was easy for them to get her cell phone number. And so they friended her on Facebook because, hey, it's her 10th grade year of school. She's meeting all these friends. And so the fact that she was getting so many different kinds of friends requests, even people maybe that she didn't really recognize, she didn't have a problem accepting those requests. Then all of a sudden the text started coming. Just randomly, out of the blue one day. God, you're fat. Why would you wear something like that? A few days later, a week later, another one. You're so ugly. God, won't you do something about that face? Or they would call her out actually by her outfit that she had on. Saw you at the mall last night. You had this on. Do you know you look like a cow? The thing about Emily is every time she'd get one of those texts, she'd delete it. She'd deal with it on her own. Her parents had no idea these things started coming. In fact, it started getting worse and worse. And over about an 8-month time period, she kept getting these texts. And the one thing about Emily was that she started to try to make them stop. She would text back, "Who is this? What have I done to you?" Things like that. They would never reply. Then it went to the point that she decided she'd start changing the way she looked. She'd change the clothes that she wears. She'd change her hairstyle. She'd change her hair color. She even quit going to games. She quit wanting to go shopping. She quit wanting to do all sorts of things because she was afraid she would run into whoever these people were that were texting her. But there was one place Emily could go to get away from everything. She had a place of solitude. We all have that. Emily's place was her grandma's house. You know that, right? You go to grandma's house, you get whatever you want there, right? That's how it was with Emily. Emily shows up at Nana's house. That's what she would call her grandma. Emily shows up at Nana's house, but it's on. What? You want cookies? We're making cookies. You want something to drink? We'll go to the store and buy it. It was whatever. And so Emily loved being at her Nana's house because she was treated like a princess. That was her place of sanctity. Till one day, she was sitting at the kitchen island watching her Nana prepare supper for her granddad, and her phone vibrated, and she picked the phone up and she looked at it, and it says, "You're fat and ugly." And at that moment she realized her sanctuary had been invaded. One place that she could go to get away from everything now has been invaded. Her hands began to tremble, and she just deleted it and threw the phone down on the counter. And her Nana turned around and said, Emily, what's wrong with you? What's the matter? She goes, it's nothing, Nana. Don't worry about it. A few minutes later, the phone vibrated again, and she picked it up. It says, nobody will ever want you. She started thinking, and a tear rolled off of her face, and she says, you know what, maybe no one ever will. I'm a big girl. No one will ever appreciate who I am. And her grandmother turned around, Emily, something's bothering you. I can see it in your face. What's wrong? She says, you wouldn't understand, Nana. And she deleted the text message and she laid it down. What she was doing was just exiting out of messages. Finally, the phone vibrated one more time, and she picked it up, and this time it said, why don't you kill yourself? Make everyone happy, and when you do kill yourself, we're going to come by your casket and spit in your fat, ugly face. And that was the last one that Emily couldn't handle. She threw the phone down, and she decided if the last person she saw alive would be the person that she felt like loved her the most, and that was her Nana. And her Nana had a heart condition. She jumps up, she runs to her Nana's bathroom. She starts just taking all kinds of pills, locks herself in the bathroom, and her grandmother picks up the phone and looks at it and sees those messages, and she runs to the bathroom, she beats on the door, she said, Emily, open the door, baby, don't do nothing stupid. She'd hear Emily sobbing on the other side, but Emily wouldn't do nothing, and she'd shake and beat on the door. Emily, open the door, sweetheart, open up. No answer. She runs back to the kitchen and she calls Emily's dad, who lived a mile up the road, and says, get down here now. Emily's been getting all these text messages, and she's in the bathroom. I'm afraid she's doing something stupid. Her dad jumped in his truck and he goes flying down to the house. He comes in and his mom hands him the phone, and he begins to read the text messages as he's going to the bathroom to find his daughter. And he's like, why would someone send my kid this? He was trying to read it, and he didn't understand why someone would talk about his kid in such a way and do these types of things when she's always funning on, because he had no clue. He just thought all the things that had been happening over the last 8 months was a teenager going through some sort of different kinds of phases of life. He never took the time to see what was really going on in her life. Her dad gets to the door and he begins to beat on the door and shake the knob. And he says, baby, open the door. It's your dad. What's going on? This time there was no sobs on the other side. He beat on it frantically, and finally he did what any good dad in this room would do, right? It's a kitchen bathroom door. He laid back and he busted through the door. Can I tell you, the worst day of my life was when I walked in that bathroom and found my kid slumped over a toilet. All because 3 girls just thought it was a game. Didn't know her, didn't even care about her. They just wanted to send messages to her. Just wanted to watch her life be miserable. The kid was successful at everything she ever put her hand to. Sang like nobody's business. Sound like Adele. Beautiful voice. The one thing she wasn't successful at was suicide. So we had to go through therapy, hospital. We went through all the junk. I'd like to say that it ended and we lived happily ever after. It didn't. She still struggles with self-image issues. She's a beautiful girl. She could be a makeup artist. She's 25 in October now. Went off to college, got her degree. The one thing that she didn't learn in college is once you get the degree, you don't move back home. So she moved back home with Daddy. But the story I just told you is the reason that we do school assemblies on bullying and suicide and self-respect. Because I don't want another parent to walk through and see something that I saw. Because as much as I get a happy ending, as much as it can be happy, there's a lot of parents that don't get the happy ending. On the other side, I get 1,000 kids or parents go up to me, my kid's being bullied, and we start talking about bullying, and then I realize, no, your kids just had a bad situation one day. Let me explain to you what bullying looked like. Let me explain to you what it really looks like. I wish 1,000 times now that I would have taken more time to talk to my kid, but I didn't. Now we talk a lot. In fact, the story that I just told you is true. And a lot of times, if we were in a school, I would have let Emily walk out here and finish her story. Because I can tell you how I felt that day. I can tell you how her mama felt that day. I can tell you how her grandparents felt. But I can never tell you what was going through Emily's mind, and she does a very good job of explaining that. But I want to talk to you about the difference between bullying. There is a difference between bad behavior and just bullying. Because I don't want to diminish the facts of what bullying really is. And we live in a society today that we can classify things and talk about things and deal with things in a way. Can bad behavior turn into bullying? Definitely. And I think it's very important that we address bad behavior early. I think we address something soon before it turns into something major later. And so I want to walk through some of this today. And so I'll just take you through a definition to bullying. Surveys tell us that 21% of kids ages 12 to 18 experience bullying at some point in their life. And when I'm talking about bullying, I'm talking about the oppressive type bullying. However, as parents, we also need to understand that not all bad behavior between students qualifies as bullying. There are going to be days that your kid is going to walk into a situation and someone's just going to be mean to them that day. Guess what? I've been in a restaurant and someone be mean to me in a restaurant, right? But it doesn't make it bullying at that moment. It doesn't make it that it was intended for harm. It was just someone was rude, someone's mean, someone said a bad thing, someone didn't like the way my hair was parted that day. You know what I'm saying? So we understand that people can be mean. You don't like that? You don't like my haircut? There's a difference between the bullying, the teasing, and being mean and just plain rudeness. Bullying does have specific characteristics that most experts agree upon. Bullying always intends to do harm. All right, when I was in high school, I didn't have a cell phone. Didn't have no clue what a cell phone was ever going to be like. So bullying to me was two guys would come up to you and shove you into a locker. Or two guys would kind of take it up. Now, I played on the football team, so I didn't have too much of an issue of a bullying except in junior high. I got bullied really bad in junior high because I was a little scrawny kid. And something happened between 8th grade and 9th grade that I went from this 5'8", 10 to 6'3". And all of a sudden I was the starter on the line on the football team. And so I realized there's power in size. So I decided to flip the tables. Instead of, before you can get to me, I'm going to get to you type mentality. And that was the way I used the aggression. But the tendency says, just because someone does something that hurts someone's feelings doesn't always make it bullying. Bullies act with deliberate intention to harm someone, whether by emotion or physical. In our days, it was always going to be physical. They'd call you names and stuff, but usually it was always a physical. Even today, we still have physical bullying. But I'm going to tell you, emotional bullying, a lot that you'll see through texting and social media and stuff, the cyberbullying is one of the ones that I'm going to tell you emotionally, those things will start adding up quickly. My daughter, the 3 girls that were doing this, let me tell you something about Emily. Emily loves UFC. She loves to watch Ultimate Fighter. She likes anything that has to do with MMA. And Emily could snap anyone in half. Anyone in here, if she was here, if you came at her, she could take you down in this room. And all 3 of those girls together couldn't have made up that with Emily. But the moment you called her fat, the moment you called her ugly, chunky, whatever you used, she turned into a puddle. She couldn't handle those words. And so the power of the words, it was an emotional attack. It was a psychological attack that was meant to tear her down. Their goal was every day, if they saw her smile, if they saw her looking like she was enjoying herself, that was when they would hit her. That was what would happen to make sure that she was having a miserable life. That's what makes bullying, was there's intent. Bullying happens repeatedly. It's not a once deal. According to bullying.gov, bullying behaviors happen more than once, or have the potential to happen more than once. That's why it's important a lot of times if you start seeing that intentional attack, where it's like you're attacking the psychological or physical, you can see that, especially in teachers and educators, you can see that within kids, that all of a sudden a kid has been targeted. Everyone doesn't like this kid, or 3 or 4 don't like this kid, and they're intentionally kind of gearing towards that kid. If you can stop it before it gets into a 2-time, 3-time event, because then it begins to progress. In other words, bullies usually don't stop with just one incident. It's either going to continue harassing someone or threaten to do so in the future. They'll throw out them threats. They'll put things out there in a way that they want to keep that person known. They want to keep them under their thumb. It's a control thing. Another thing that you'll start seeing a lot of times as they grow out of that, a lot of the ones that have these issues, you'll start seeing that even creep into a domestic violence type situation. You'll see, usually I can almost guarantee you, if there's been a violent person, especially in a domestic violence situation, you go back through their history, you can find where they probably were a bully. They used that aggression, or they used the intent of being able to control and manipulate somebody even at an earlier age. So that's why it's important to begin to address things even at a younger age. I was asked, should this be geared more for junior high and high school? Because when we do school assemblies, we only do school assemblies from middle school through high school. We don't do elementary, but it needs to be addressed there because it starts forming there. Trust me, kids know how to use devices. I've got a 4-year-old grandson, a 2-year-old grandson, and a 7-month-old granddaughter. My 7-month-old granddaughter loves to FaceTime with me. She lives in Meridian. All my grandkids live in Meridian, and she loves to FaceTime with me. She wants to hold the device at 7 months old. My 2-year-old grandson, who just went home Saturday, he spent 4 days over here with G, let me tell you what, he can work my iPad better than I can work my iPad. He's done figured out the code to Nicktoons, how to get on the Nick. So, he's a clever little guy. And so, they learn quick how to begin to use things and how things work and how to communicate. So it's important to pay attention to how they're working in that area. Bullies shift power. Bullies want to control and have power over their victims, like I was saying, and they can do that through numerous means. Number one is through physical contact. That's always seems the most popular way of bullying, is that grabbing, hitting, controlling, pushing, always establishing yourself. If it's always the one that they want to establish themselves and always push them back. You can a lot of times tell a victim of bullying, it's whenever if they have gotten it, they receive a lot of abuse, a physical type of abuse, you start seeing that hand shyness. They kind of want to back away or they're real reclusive. And if the person comes in the room, they instantly almost put themselves to where they're the defense, where their back is to them, where they can that's even a form of protection, that they can kind of get away from it. Verbal attacks. Verbal attacks is something that'll always come on. The name callings, whatever you want to call it. Cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is growing so fast because it can be done anonymously. When he was saying that about anonymously, that makes it so easy because they can do it. They can come in and just berate you over anything. And we see that even in adults today. I watch posts. I watch groups. We've got groups here. Well, let's talk Brandon. Let's talk Brandon Uncensored. Let's talk Pearl. Let's talk whatever. Well, guess what? You do a lot of talking. And I can just about tell you by some of the comments of parents on there, they were probably bullies at one time. Just by the aggressiveness of the way they talk. But you know what? They wouldn't come say that in my face. You might whoop me, but you're gonna have a handful and you grab a hold of me. But behind that keyboard and that screen, I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I can say and do what I want to do. The other thing you'll start seeing is the exclusions. Another way to control someone is cut them from the herd. The old lion tactics where they look for the weakest one. You cut them from the herd. Once there's no support and there's no groupness there and you can get them out of the herd, now you've got them in a place because now they're alone. You're excluding them, and one can be defeated way easier than a group that stands together. And so that's why you'll start seeing how they shift their power. Rudeness is not the same as being a bully. Bad behavior and tension between peers does not equal bullying in most cases, but it can lead to it in the future. Name calling, push, shove, insulting does not make someone a bully, but it does make them rude. Okay? It needs to be addressed. Teachers, it needs to be addressed. Parents, guess what? Your kids aren't perfect. Neither am I. You know what? I would remember a teacher calling me and saying, your kid did this at school. And I'm like, Yep, you're exactly right. Because they've done worse than that at home. And I've called them. But I know my kid's character. There are times that my kid was accused of something that they didn't do. I was almost positive because that was out of the character of my child. But so even in that, we have to be strong enough as parents to accept the responsibility to help discipline our kids on that. No one wants to see your child get your feelings hurt. But if there's a conflict between students, we have to be careful not to label the other party as a bully. Doing so can diminish the seriousness of actual bullying. I'm a big advocate of that. Because not only am I the executive director of Say Something Assemblies here, but I'm also the national director of Student Outreach, Awareness, and Training for Free International, which is a human trafficking organization. And we travel all over the U.S. doing school assemblies and stuff, and I walk into a setting and I see people diminish certain words. I see them diminish the words of prejudice. I see them diminish the word of racism. I see them diminish the words of bullying and harm. And when it really does happen and someone needs to take effect on it, then it's overlooked because we've diminished and watered down what it really is instead of taking it as for what it truly is so that it can be handled properly. And so if we teach our kids all this stuff and we diminish them, every time someone comes in there and pushes them down and they come to the teacher, hey, he's bullying me. How did he bully you? He ran into me in the hallway. Knocked my books down. Is he doing it all the time? No, he just did it. Okay, that wasn't bullying. He's just being a jerk. But he wasn't bullying you, okay? Students have to be reasonably held accountable. Like I said, your kids aren't perfect. Bring attention to the action and step toward, and as a step toward becoming a bully. If a student is bullying a fellow student, then actions need to be taken to help that student as well as the victim regain a sense of hope and growth. You know what? I have parents all the time come up to me like, what do we need to do? Because we'll do parents' nights a lot of times on the tail end of school assemblies where we'll present and let all the presenters have something to say at a parents' night. And this is a lot better representation of what we normally get out of one of those. We were in Napa Valley and had just spoke to over 10,000 students, had a family night, and 3 parents showed up. You know, kind of deal. But I'll have parents come up and they'll ask me a question and they'll say something about, well, you know what, I want to go to the school, I want them to do something about it. Well, what do you want them to do about it? Do you want them to have the bully arrested? What can they do about it? Because sometimes I'm in a place that I don't even know what the legal laws representations are that they can even do legally. Is there an accountability that needs to be handled? Yes. Someone needs to be held accountable. There needs to be a punishment. There needs to be a consequence for actions, right? We live in that society. If I come flying through the school zone over at Northwest Rankin, I know there's going to be an SUV light me up. Okay? He's going to come over with a smile on his face, wanting my driver's license. You know this is my school zone. He ain't lying when he says it gives him right to write a ticket. I have not gotten one from him. I have not gotten a ticket from him. I respect school zones because I love kids. But there has to be consequence for action, and the same thing has to be said about this. But parents, it's time that parents and educators come together and talk this out, what it really, really is. Because it's easy to get emotional. Oh, trust me, I know how easy it is to get emotional. My 4-year-old grandson and my 2-year-old grandson was at the playground over in Flowood just this week. And I'm sitting there watching kids and I'm like, I'm not watching my kids, my grandsons, because they're G's boys. They call me G Diddy. I'm like a cool granddad. And I'm watching them, but you know what I'm watching? How the other kids are treating my boys. You know, because G's like, but don't push my kid down. Don't you push Asher down. Or Silas. Silas is the little 2-year-old, and he thinks he's 8 years old. And I'm like, you better watch out for Silas, because I'm protective of them grandbabies. But I got to be careful, because kids are kids. And sometimes you just have to take those teachable moments to be able to walk them through what bullying is. The thing is, bullying has an everlasting effect on people. My daughter, I love my daughter dearly, When she went to college, even through all the therapy, everything that we went through, when she went to college, she still had self-image issues. She still had problems with the way that she viewed herself. Even if she came in here today, she's going to put on the best face that she can, and she's going to look gorgeous when she walks in the door. I can show you pictures of her. I mean, she could be a makeup artist. But she's always concerned about how she looks and what someone's going to say. And in fact, I believe that the reason she puts so much effort on her face and makeup is because she tries to draw attention away from her body so that you'll look her in the face. Because she's always afraid of what someone would say about her. In fact, in college, she met someone and got in a relationship. Fell in love, it seemed like it was going the right way, and it turns out this person realizes that she had self-image issues, told her everything she ever wanted to know, and used that against her, and wound up in a domestic violence situation while she was in college, just because she had those self-image issues. So it's always a fight. That's why it's important is once a victim has come forward and you see someone has these psychological issues that now are attached with the results of bullying, it doesn't stop there. You may stop the bullying in your school, you may stop the bullying in your house, you may end the situation, but it's a forever healing process. You've got to help restore the worth of that person back into them again. Who they are, what they are, and if they're beautiful. Because I'm going to tell you, teen suicide is something we can't fix. Once they make the decision like Emily did, that I don't want nothing else to do with life, and the most peace that I can have is to take my life, that's an uncurable disease. I'd rather fight childhood cancer with my kid than my kid choose suicide, because that's an ultimate end, right? There's nothing we can do about it. And so that's why it's important that we understand and have a response to kids and the suicide tactics. You know what? We've been in schools where suicides have recently happened. Walked into some tough situations. It's tough as a presenter to walk into a school knowing the week of or a week before you got there was a suicide, and you've got to come on and put on a great school assembly and smile and laugh. It just happened in South Dakota. We walked into a school in Sturgis, and a middle schooler had taken his life, and you've got to, and the wheels are coming off the wagon quick, you know, and you're trying to keep a focus on this, because the kids, a lot of times, and I'm going to just, can I be honest with you for a minute and just be frank? That's my nickname. You can just call me Frank because I want to be frank with you. Even in that, we need to honor and mourn the loss of someone, but we don't need to celebrate the suicide. Because a kid that has self-esteem issues, then that's when you'll start seeing repetitiveness or copycat to it, because if you've celebrated it, a lot of them then will say, hey, look at the attention he got, even though it was in death. And then they'll see that as, well, at least they would appreciate me for what I am. There had been a string and run of victims of kids that were killing themselves on Facebook Live. It was a national thing. It seemed like last year and the year before that, especially the year before that, it was a string of it happening. And we were out of state somewhere doing assemblies when one had just happened, and my daughter was with us in those assemblies, and one of the other presenters was there. His brother had committed suicide, and Terrence had been telling his story. And we began to talk about it, and we asked them, why would they go on Facebook Live to do such a horrific thing? I mean, to me, why would you do something like that? Why would you want the world to see this? And my daughter, right off the bat, it's the only voice she had. No one else would listen to her at school. No one would listen to her nowhere else. But you know what? She's forcing the world to listen to her on video. So that's why it's important that we give kids a voice. We let them talk to us. It's hard as a dad, as Officer Dimitri said, to hear your kid tell you something sometimes and not overreact. You have to do that. You have to sit there and put the fake smile on, and you're gritting and you're tensing up inside, and you're like, all right, time out, baby. Dad can only take it in so many portions. And you go into the bedroom and you just beat the fire out of the mattress and scream into the pillow, and then you come back, okay, all right, Dad feels all right. Let's go on. But you got to give them a voice to talk. My daughter will tell you this today. She'll come to me and she'll talk to me about most things. The day that I react, it cuts off. She don't want to talk no more. But the day that I respond and I sit there and I'm like, baby, I hate you had to go through that today, she'll keep talking. And sometimes it's best to let a student talk it out. I've actually seen students talk things out, work out their difference they had with somebody, and we as parents are the ones that are still fuming over it. Oh, we're not selling. So we go back to school the next week. Yeah, it's all weekend. Now the kids done vented. They done talk, and maybe now they've done text the person they had the issues with, and then over the weekend they've worked it out and everything's cool. Monday morning we're rolling in, but both moms show up at the school. Oh, now it's mom on mom because they done turn towards each other because your kid said this. No, your kid did this, and so we have to understand that voice has to be there. That give your child time to talk it out, but you got to give them the venue to be able to talk it out. Because, you know what? Sometimes they're going to tell you things that's going to hurt. What are you going to do when your kid comes in and tells you that they tried a drug for the first time? Or they did something for the first time that you've told them not to do? Are you going to go crazy on them right there at that moment? Because as a dad, that's your first gut reaction. What have you done? Kind of deal. But if you'll let them talk it out, they'll just about tell you how stupid of a choice it was if you'll let them finish it out and they know that you love and understand it. Statistics tell us that 27.9%, you can say 28% of students reported feelings of depression, with a high percentage among those being girls at 41% of those. Why? We live in a society that puts a lot of effort and a lot of emphasis on image, what this looks like. You know what? My wife did not marry this. She married something. What are you laughing at? I worked hard to get this. There's a lot of money invested in this. How many buffets I done went through? She married a long flowing mullet. Did you not? She did. I want my mullet back. I'm like Billy Ray Cyrus. She married someone that was younger and more agile. Now I wake up with something hurting every other day. See, this ain't what she married, and we need our kids to understand that. Maybe this fades. Things go south. Things get wider. It's what's in here is always going to be the same. And it's what's in here is what gets better. But girls have to struggle with it the most because the image and stuff is put on them. Almost 16% of students report that they have seriously considered attempting suicide, with the highest percentage of those amongst 9th grade girls. Most schools that we've gone into, if you hear of a female suicide, it's usually going to be between 8th and 10th grade almost every time. 12 to 4% of our students reported that they had a suicide plan. Kid you not, we've done school assemblies where a student has come up and handed us her suicide note. Said tonight was the night. I think people can testify to some of those. 40% of all suicide victims test positive for drugs or alcohol because you know why? They're trying to fix something. They're trying to stop the pain somewhere. So the drugs and the alcohol would be something that some of them would try. Other than that, once that's not working, they figure 51% of victims experience a crisis within the previous 2 weeks before committing suicide. We've literally seen students that you start talking to them and that maybe they were having the suicidal tens. They were going up and down, up and down. The one in South Dakota that we heard, the middle school, had nothing to do with bullying. It had to do with him and his dad. He had a bad family life. He had been getting the help. He was going to counseling. He was in a good situation. He came home. Him and his dad had a fight. His dad took the phone from him. And it was no argument. He immediately walked out of the living room from his dad to get even with his dad. Now, this is a 6th grader. To get even with his dad, walked into his dad's bedroom, pulled out a pistol, and committed suicide. He was doing good. Everyone's like, man, he was doing so good. We didn't see this coming. It was that incident that pushed him back over the edge, that threw him off. Jason Foundation says that suicide is the second leading cause of death of ages between 10 and 24 in the United States. Most teenagers and young adults more die from suicide than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, strokes, pneumonia, influenza, chronic disease. All of that combined does not make up for our teenage suicide crisis in our country. You see now, it's an epidemic. On average, 3,041 suicide attempts by teens happen every day in our country. Some of those are successful. 4 out of 5 teen suicides have been given clear warnings the whole time that it was going on. They were saying words, they were saying things that was bringing attention to it. A lot of them always had, for these ages, they had a crisis in the past 2 years. Some of them had an intimate partner. It just blows my mind away of how many young boys that's their option because a girl broke up with them. Bro, let me tell you one. Yeah, but to them, that's their reality. That's their world. That's the reality they're living in at that moment. Current depressed mood, depression is another major cause. Relationship, friendship, family problems, you can see the list all the way down to some sort of criminal or legal problem. A kid broke the law, don't want to tell their dad what they've done, don't want to face the curtain call on the issue, and so they choose the quick way out. In fact, that's why now you will see that most school shooters or mass shooters usually commit suicide on the tail end because they just don't want to go through the court process. They do their deed, and at the whole beginning, they went into it with the plan of taking their life to begin with. 3 major reasons why they do. Recent crisis happens in 3s, and only one can trigger those. Depression or mental illness, abuse or bullying, or an ongoing basis. I want to tell you what, in 1999, probably one of the hardest times. It was Good Friday in 1999 in Lauderdale County. My wife and I got married. She graduated high school in June of '89. We got married in August of '89. 2 years later, had our first kid. 2 years later, the next kid, and we all grew up together. And but right after we had gotten married, when I met, she's the oldest of 5, and Stacy was the youngest. She was 4 when we met, 6 when we got married in 1999. Stacy, along with her boyfriend and her best friend, all 3 got killed in a car wreck by a guy that hit them head on that was high on crystal meth. And so we buried 3 teenagers in one day. And toughest days that I had walked through up to what happened with Emily. And as we were going through that, it was a freak deal. And the guy did test positive of being high on methamphetamines. But right off the bat, everybody, if social media would have been stronger in '99 as it is now, but the phone lines were blown up. These 3 kids got killed in a drinking and driving accident. It was just, everyone was saying that they were drunk driving, to the point that they finally did have to do a test on Freddie's body to make sure that he wasn't drunk to disprove it. But the rumor mill, man, started grinding. Or if you're military, the scuttle bucket started emptying, buddy, because they were throwing it out there, all these rumors. It's the same thing when you hear of a teen suicide. Right off the bat, you'll start hearing, oh, this was a bully-driven suicide. Bully-driven suicide. This kid was bullied. Or now, if a kid's in a wreck, oh, they were texting and driving. Right? It's not so much drinking and driving, it's texting and driving. And so no one knows the facts. Can I tell you what? When a tragedy happens, shut up. Just shut up. Pray for the family, be there and support them, do whatever you need to do to help the community, help the school, all that. But shut up about what caused it, because it's speculation. Unless you were standing there before it happened and you were riding with them when it happened, or whatever the case may be, you've got no voice in the fight. Amen. You just be quiet. And with that, we'll see a lot more issues go down. Because a lot of times you can start a crisis in a school claiming that it was a bully and suicide when a lot of times it had nothing to do with it. It happens. I'm not downplaying that. It happens. But understand the truths. 4 out of 5 teens who commit suicides gave clear warnings, like we said earlier. So what are responses? Warning signs, suicide threats, direct or indirect, preoccupation or obsession with death or suicide, depression, final arrangements, other signs. You'll hear kids say stuff. And if I go back and think about things my daughter said, she would say stuff like, "You'd be better off without me." And they say, "Oh, I was just kidding." There's a proverb that says, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Okay? So whatever's in here, whether it's hard or harsh or bad, it's going to come out somewhere. If you're an angry person, you're a bitter person inside, it's going to come out of your mouth with hatred and words or whatever. It's the same way with this. If they're contemplating and it's settling in here, take every word they say if they're talking about self-harm seriously. I would rather them go through counseling and say, "Well, no, they didn't really have an issue," and say, "Whew, thank the Lord that wasn't what it was," than to let them go through it and then ultimately end their life. And those other signs, suicide threats, direct or indirect, these are just things you'll hear them say. "I hate my life. You'd be better off without me around. I don't want to be bothering you much longer. I'd rather be dead." Again, the indirect joking or texting, social media posts, if you see them swirling in a world of darkness, dark drawings, sketches, you start seeing, you have a kid that's drawing on their notepads and stuff, and it's dark type stuff, and it's not Halloween. Okay? These are warning signs. Essays, writing about death, journaling, and I would even say on the journaling that they're posting stuff on their social media that it's always kind of surrounding death, or they're almost glamorizing celebrities and people that's committed suicide. It's almost they start seeing the fame and that type of stuff. Depression, understand that sudden abrupt changes in personality, expressions of hopelessness and despair, declining grades and school performances, that's things that we should have saw imminently. If I look back through this, there's a lot of this stuff that I could go back and say, you know what, I missed every stinking one of these on my kid. Why? Because I was a busy man. Working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Working so much I was selling my vacations and not taking them. And I wish now I could go back 1,000 times and take every vacation day that I had, take my kids to the beach, take them to the mountains, and held them and loved on them more, because maybe then they would have enjoyed life a little more and wouldn't have had some of the issues that we were starting to see. Does it all mean? No, but I'm just saying that might would have been one more thing that helped. Final arrangements, if you start seeing them giving away prized possessions, things they love, putting their affairs in order. If you start hearing a kid tell their friends in school bye, and it's like a final goodbye, like they're moving. You would almost think it sounds like they're moving off. "Hey, I'm probably not going to be here next week. And so I just want to let you know you've been a good friend to me. And I thank you for being here for me." So that's something you snatch them down and say, "Hey, are you moving? What's going on? Hey, what's happening in your life?" Start digging, find out what was pushing that on. Making funeral arrangements, who they want to be their pallbearers, what kind of music they want played in their funeral. Trust me, I say that now. I've already told my wife, you got to play "Mama, I'm Coming Home" by Ozzy Osbourne at my funeral. I was a headbanger in high school too. That's the mullet. But, that's different. Whenever they've really started, they've got it down to an eccentric plan. They're almost celebrating what's to come, because that's the way they're dealing with it. Other signs, and we can go through, I hate that we can't take all the time that we'd love to take, but there are tons of other signs that you need to pay attention to, from experiencing a recent loss with a loved one, relationship, loneliness, abandonment, taking excessive risks and recklessness. We need to be able to differentiate all these things that happen. Suicide doesn't just end the pain. If I could tell every student that's contemplating it, it doesn't end the pain. It just transfers it to someone else. Your pain may be over, that kid's pain may be over, but that family's pain, it just impacted it. Their friends, the school, the community, it just impacted a whole bunch of people. And we can go through the myths, and if you would like this, I'll give the school district a copy of this presentation, and you can ask them to download it, and they'll put it up. We'll put it up in a PDF form where you can. People who talk about suicide won't really do it. That's false. If they're talking about it, they're already usually planning it. If a person is determined to kill himself, there's nothing they can do to stop him or her. That is false. We've seen it numerous times. Kids that were talking about suicide had a plan, had an idea. We've literally had straight razors given to us in school assemblies. We've been into a place, one of our presenters was at a place, And it's a big against the law thing, and the kid had repercussion from it, but I'd rather him deal with the repercussion of bringing a loaded pistol to school, but they had a small handgun that they weren't even going to get on the bus. They were going to go to the backside of the school property and kill themselves. That was the only intention for the gun. They had no intention to do a shooting at school. They were going to take their life. They weren't going home. You know what? I'm glad he had legal repercussions that he had to walk through and stuff, than funeral arrangements that had to be made for a kid. Talking about suicide may give someone else the idea this is fault. In fact, the opposite is true. I've heard people say, you don't need to be talking about this so much in schools because you're going to give them ideas. No. It takes them all of 30 seconds to get ideas on how to kill themselves. They need to hear true, real stories. They need to hear the life and struggles that's happening in your life. Parents, you need to let them know. Be real with them. Be transparent. These are things that we've walked through. These are tough things. You know what? I don't always like my wife. I can tell you there's a lot of times she don't always like me, but I love her dearly. And you know what? We wake up tomorrow and we start a new day. And we begin over and we work it out. Kids need to hear that. They need to understand that. That, you know, today might have been a bad day, but tomorrow is a gift that we get to restart again and try something different. Also, most suicidal young people never seek or ask for help for their problems. This is a true statement. Adolescents are more likely to ask for help through nonverbal gestures than they are to express their verbal situation. That's the reason we do our school assemblies the way we do them. They're in your face, they're fun, but we bring them to a point that, believe it or not, how many of you are faculty members in here? Raise your hand. You see kids on a regular basis. And you think, you know, in fact, sometimes you see kids more than their parents see them. And you would think, you know what, that kid, I would have never thought that from that kid. But we took them to a place through laughter, through joy, through sorrow, through anger, whatever the emotions are that we've worked through the spectrum of the assembly. It's designed for a certain reason. So at the end, we've tore down walls with a student that they'll walk up to a complete stranger and say, I need help today. And that's why we do what we do. So we need to learn to respond. We will walk more through this, but I will tell you this. You need to support your faculty whenever they walk through a situation like this. You have counselors. You have a great counselor, crisis counselor, Martha Hollingsworth in this district. I can tell you this lady works feverishly. And she's not paying me a dime to say this, but I'm going to say it because I've watched her over the last 3 years. That we'd be in the middle of school assemblies and she'd lean over and say, hey, I got to go to Richland, or hey, I've got to go to Puckett, I've got a crisis here, and she's out the door. And I'm like, who's going to roll my extension cords? She knows I'm OCD about the way cords get rolled, so she puts miles on the vehicle every week trying to help students. And so she cares. She cares. This school district cares. Parents, I know you care. And I know you don't know me from Adam's house cat till today. But I can tell you this. I love you kids. I don't do what I do because it's a good paying job. Because it's not really. And it's a stressful job. And after a week of assemblies, now that I'll be 49 in December, usually I need a vacation after every week of assemblies we do because it's strenuous and tiring on the body. But on the other side, it's the best job that I've ever had. Because I get to look at your students and I get to see hope. I get to see a future of a nation. I get to see a future of government. I get to see my future legislators and people that I'm going to be buying things from and all. And I have faith in that. For every bad incident that I can tell you about, and we'll focus on the one bad kid or the one bad incident, there's thousands that you're missing that are good. Okay? There's 1,000 good experiences that you're missing. So again, I thank you for your time today. I'll make these slides and all available to the district so you can contact them and you'll be free to download them and use them as you like. I give away everything that I have. But thank you again. I second Officer Dimitri. You have value, just like I tell every kid. You were created for a purpose. You have a destiny. And there's a spot in this world that can never be filled by someone else that you were created specifically to do. And so again, thank you for tonight.